This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Our first author might be a little racy for some of you, but hopefully you'll appreciate her process. Listen, if you want to write a book, you have to go with what you know. Or in B.J. Henderson's case, what you dream. She lives on a farm in Utah and has a job with a big bank, and still, she has the first page she wrote as a little kid. One day not too long ago, she was suddenly inspired, wrote a story, and 12 hours later she had a book. It's entitled Just Sex, a book of short stories. All right, so tell me about the dreams.
Yeah, I went to Russia and had an interesting dream while I was there and came home and put that one to page.
Okay.
And then it just flowed from there.
So it's a series of short stories.
It is.
And the name of your book is Just Sex.
Correct. Which tells you what kind of dreams I'm having.
You're having sex dreams.
I guess so, yeah.
And you're using BJ as your author name, which I find hilarious.
I always complained to my mother that I hated my name until I put this book together.
And then you said, well, good thing, right?
Yep, it's working out well.
All right, is it attracting attention for you?
It is, yes.
All right, so share some of these stories with me.
Well, Megan is the first one I wrote, the one that I had the dream in Russia. She is a quiet girl who she's nothing special. She's on the cheerleading squad. Her boyfriend cheats on her publicly with her sister, of all people. So she decides to get revenge and starts learning about all kinds of sex, internet porn and other assorted ventures, and decides that she's going to become an internet star. And she gets a following, and she gets people that just randomly come into her home, and they have sex in her parents' house in her bedroom until somebody gives her a house. And then she rigs that all up with cameras. So she's basically like the Big Brother house on 24-hour watch, and that's all she does all day long is have sex.
And people watch.
And people watch,
Some
yes.
people are into that.
Some people are very into that.
And what do we learn?
Well, that revenge isn't necessarily the best course of action, but sometimes it leads to other ventures.
And that's just one.
My favorite one is A Ghostly Affair, where the girl thinks she's having dreams of having sex when it turns out that she's actually having sex with a ghost.
Oh.
And she learns about his whole story. And I don't want to give away too much in that, but they basically live happily ever after.
Wow. Can he get her pregnant?
Not in his current manifestation.
Oh, now that's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
and then there's Brothel, where the girl is a licensed sex worker in a brothel in Pahrump, Utah. And it goes through the process of getting licensed and then her working the job and falling in love with another coworker.
Same sex?
Same sex.
Okay. So is this just a fun beach read?
It's definitely not something I could talk about at work. So, yeah, getting the word out there has been a bit of a struggle, especially since I have a very, very Christian family.
Oh, how
yeah.
Christian?
Extremely. I have pastors and missionaries and, yeah.
What kind of religion?
Southern Baptist.
Oh, geez. Wow. Well, maybe that's what drove you to this, because you hear that all the time.
Possibly.
Right? So now you're finally breaking out of that mold.
Yeah, I would have to say that, yes. Obviously, this one's a bigger struggle to get in stores.
Okay.
But there's a local lingerie company out here that's allowing me to do a few book signings. So I've got those in the works.
Are you wearing a bag over your head? I mean, what are you doing?
No, I've decided to be proud of myself.
All right. Be proud and go with the flow. Fred Keene is a retired IT guy, and he needed food for his brain, so he decided to start writing. He was inspired by a guy he knew when he was in the Army, tall, with a Paul Newman kind of cool, who became Duffy in his book entitled Duffys 100 Days.
Duffy is basically got himself into a rut. He goes to work every day on the bus. And then right after work, he heads over to a local bar and gets himself half plastered and goes home. And during this time period, his editor gives him an assignment to do some investigative reporting on the Keene family, which is the richest family in Philadelphia. It's totally fictional. And in that action alone, all of a sudden he gets involved in all sorts of other things. And he gets involved with the fact that there was a young lady who was really nothing like what she presented herself publicly. And she gets killed, and he realizes she's been killed and didn't commit suicide. And the police agree with him. And through the Keen's money, he sets up a trap to catch the serial killer. And sure enough, towards the end of the book, obviously, he does catch the serial killer. And along the way, becomes very integrated into the Keen family. He starts dating one of the daughters. He goes to a dinner there at the Keens. And his whole new personality now, or new life actually, has become totally changed from what he was used to. He's now all of a sudden really in the middle of everything, and he seems to enjoy it. And in the end of the book, he and Anne Keen go off to Europe on an art buying trip, and that's where the book ends. And the second book starts where he's waiting in the airport in Paris, France, to come back to the United States and back to work after his vacation. And I should also say that during the time period, he has to cover the police reports, and he becomes a hero when he saves a policeman's life, and in the action ends up killing 4 very dangerous criminals. So his whole life is just been changed entirely when he gets involved with all these different agencies.
Do you wish that would happen to you?
Oh God, no!
Too much excitement?
No, actually, the book started writing itself with the character. As every day I'd sit down and start up again, it seemed like the character was taking the book along where he wanted it to, and not myself. I'm not saying that in a spooky way. It just discovered, I'd heard other people say that that book is character driven, but I never really understood that until now. And you just start using the character, and then you get to a point what the character would do. Oh, so-and-so would do this. And so it just keeps going right along. So There's going to be a trilogy about him. It mainly was an exercise in intellect, really, more than anything else.
All right, Fred, nice job. Amy Catlin is on a journey, determined to get some things off her bucket list. One of them was to immerse herself in her joy of writing and finish a book. After 4 years of some serious work, she's published The Fear Inside. So what'd you come up with, Amy?
The book is about a young girl who all her life was just really sheltered and kind of oppressed. And when she went to college, she found the strength to kind of come out of that shell. It happened around the murder of her father and an investigator that imposed himself on her life. And she started learning who she was and what she was capable of. It's a visionary, so it's got a little bit of the supernatural mixed in with it.
How so?
When she starts finding out who she is, she can trace her roots back to Germany, and some of the supernatural events that are happening around her, she realizes she's causing them herself. And it's in the bloodline that runs back from her family in Germany.
Did you dream this, or how did you?
I've always had an interest in the supernatural. I always have. And then just the idea of a woman being oppressed and finding her own strength and becoming her own person, that's huge for me.
Why?
That's just kind of how my life has gone, I guess.
Just kind of finding your way.
Yes, finally, at this age.
It's never too late to find your way.
No, it isn't. And once you get on that track, it's just an amazing journey.
Yeah. So this was inspired somewhat by your own life.
Yes, it was. Yeah, there are parts, when a writer puts herself or himself into a story, some of it has to be kind of based on what they have known to make it more realistic. So yeah, some of the situations and places and all are familiar to me.
Are you able to talk about this?
I have been studying how to blog. So I am going to start a blog and go that way. Well, I was a librarian a few years ago, and so I've been trying to email libraries and tell them about what I'm doing and give them some information and background. But I've just gotten started, so I've had some major events in my life, and I have to prioritize and get to a place where I can put my feet on the ground and get started.
Okay, because I would think a library would love to have you do a book reading.
Yes, and I think that we will go that way. The book was just released this year, so I'm hoping that that will be happening. I have an English degree. I taught school for 10 years. Then I was a librarian for 3 years. And now I work in a company that supplies libraries with books. So I'm still in that on that avenue where I can have some contacts.
You're on the right track.
I hope so.
All right. Richard Coleman is the owner of a septic hauling business on an island in Lake Superior called Madeline in the town of La Pointe. He used to write stories as a kid, then found out he could entertain others, started contributing comments to newspapers, hoping to make people laugh, and now he's written his first book. It's called Superior Passage.
We don't have television, and so we have found that the time that we use here, my wife and I, is a little bit more constructive than average. So I had written a book called The Curve Theory, which got quite convoluted, and it's on the shelf. I put it aside because I came to a point where I couldn't finish it, but I hope to. But this book came to mind because of an old character that I knew, and a seafaring man who impressed me quite a bit when I was living in a marina in Fort Lauderdale. And he was just, about a century and a half behind everybody else. He did everything the hard way, and he taught me a lot about seamanship and rigging a sailing vessel, which is my passion. I love to sail. So, it just came naturally. The winters are long here, and I just spent my evenings entertaining myself by writing, and I've always done that. I'm an avid reader, so it just seemed natural to do it.
So Shoddy Murphy is your guy.
Shoddy is the name of my great-grandfather, and I've always enjoyed that name. Yeah, Shoddy Murphy. So my cousin in Florida wrote me and said, "What have you done to my grandfather's name?"
And you get stuck on your sailboat.
It finally makes it into Lake Superior, which is notorious for its storms.
Okay.
And he gets in over his head, and he goes aground on a small island, and he's isolated there, and he's got to find a way to get off. He's made himself a home, and but he's outside the shipping lanes, and it'd be rare for a fishing boat to come by. So he had to, he became rather ingenious in designing an escaped aircraft. He built himself a balloon that he managed to escape to the mainland of Canada, and that's where his real adventure started. He met some native Canadians, French Canadians, whose job was to secure food for the lumber camps. So they were hunters, and they hunted all day, and they found him, and he joined them. And it's the book consists of one adventure after another. He's jumping from one thing to another, and it's pretty lively. It's fun to read.
So, I mean, are there bookstores up there? How are you telling people about it?
What I did was I hired a publishing company just as a vanity thing, and we distributed here in the local area. So people said, well, you need to get better coverage. You need to get, more people to know this book because it's really enjoyable. And I must say, I've got nothing but positive returns on it. So I feel quite positive about it. So that's when I started doing some research. I came across Page, and I liked, I kind of thought, well, this might fit right in, and dealing with the people there has been great.
All right, well, that's what we like to hear, Richard. Thank you. And we have to take a short break. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Ever meet an honest politician? Well, you're about to. David Lyons just underwent heart surgery when he talked to me from the hospital about his 2 jobs at the VA and as council president for Irvington, New Jersey. And therein lies his story. The name of his book, The Boy Becomes a Man, Confessions of an Honest Politician. Okay.
Yeah, you're talking to one.
So what made you feel the need to write this?
When I was growing up, I read Steinbeck's book in which he says a boy becomes a man when a man is needed. And I always thought my life was pretty interesting. Politics just happened to be a part of it. But I wasn't always a favorite of politicians because I used to tell them like it is. It's about sexual molestation, racism, growing up in Georgia. I was almost lynched because I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And then, there were other things that happened along the way that pushed me to do this. Problems I had with my brother going to the Georgia Reformatory when I was 10. I was always good in school. As the years went, I just grew out of it. But the book details the things I went through on the way to get where I am.
Why were you in the reformatory?
Stealing in the store. And, at 10 years old in Georgia, particularly during that time, it didn't matter if you was 10 years old. I just happened to be with guys who was doing it. I was a little afraid to be going into the stores at night.
So you had this rough and tumble childhood in Georgia and then ended up in New Jersey politics.
Right.
How did that happen?
Well, I had a cousin who lived in Jersey, and I came to visit him when I was 17 years old. Me getting into politics was my wife's thing. She had started a block association, and I became president of the block association. So that's when I started meeting politicians. And the thing about it is, I always thought politicians were crooked, and then I got into it and realized what I thought was true. They're crooked, and I decided that I'm not going to be like that.
So what were you able to do?
They wanted to put some people on a board that were going to vote for everything they wanted. One guy, they wanted to put him on the board in Irvington, but I knew that he worked in Newark. So I just wrote a letter to the mayor of Newark, Sharp James, at the time. So that particular thing went away. I've made laws which didn't always go through. I tried to stop all of the strip clubs and stuff in Irvington. Irvington is a small community, and we had about 10 or 11 strip clubs. And I was trying to stop it. And, we have to take 2 votes. The first vote, everybody went with it. The second vote, only me and one other person went with it because they got around it. The go-go bar strip club owners started talking to the other politicians. So I was effective, although it was just one of me. At this point, I'm able to accomplish things because I'm the council president. We have basically a new council, and people learn because people realize that although I was going against the things, I was going against the things that were wrong, not against the things that were right. So I was elected city council president almost 4 years ago. Unfortunately, I've been in the hospital for 2 months.
Are you going to be okay?
Yeah, I'm going to be fine. When I came in.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, you hang in there.
I will.
We can't afford to lose an honest politician.
Not
in New Jersey.
Yeah, right.
All right, my friend, you hang in there.
All right.
Laoghaire Boune was born in Guyana, now lives in Brooklyn. He spent some time in the service, and now he's a chaplain. He's written a couple of books, but this is his first for Page. It's entitled From Brokenness to Blessedness.
My book deals with the issue of brokenness. As you well know, that brokenness is something that we all experience in life. But the premise of the book attests to the fact that brokenness does not have to be the last word in someone's life, that they can move on from brokenness to experience a fulfilled life, basically. So that's why I say moving from brokenness to blessedness. There are things that we can do to prevent ourselves basically from being stuck.
You say it's not about formulas.
One of the things is that one should have an orientation to life, as in the sense that when you go through a change, when you experience a change, you have to basically adopt a new rhythm in life. When change breaks in upon us, we are in a different place. So we can't be doing business as usual. There are certain things that you basically have to let go, and then there are certain things that you have to hold on to. So there's this rhythm of holding on and the rhythm of letting go. But then there are certain questions that will confront us. And as a apologist for Jesus, we need to ask certain questions. We need to ask for certain prescriptions to what might be ailing us. But we also have to be able to live into the questions. We have to make the questions become a reality in our lives.
Is it a book of action?
Well, yes. The Greeks, for example, refer to faith as divine madness. Divine madness because there's no formula per se. The thing that faith calls us to do, faith calls us to trust. So faith basically calls us to have an orientation to life, or to adopt a mode of being, a mode of living.
So you have a congregation.
Yes, I do.
And you're also counsel.
Right.
So is that how you tell people about your book?
I tell people about my book. I have book signings. I've had some nice book signings. I market it on my social network page. We're in the process of building a website and doing some heavy duty marketing of the book using LinkedIn and some other applications that he's recommending to me to do. So that's what I'm doing. And also word of mouth, just handing out. I've made copies of the book covers. So I give out these 4x6 cards, with the scripture saying on the back of the card and a picture of the book on the front of the card. So that's what I call guerrilla marketing.
All right, guerrilla marketing. That's what we like to hear. Finally, Lindo is an office manager in Brooklyn. He started writing after high school, poetry, songs, short stories. Now he's published his first book entitled The Unsaid Thoughts of a Quiet Man. So a lot of these poems were supposed to be songs.
So the unsaid was actually lyrics that were written to be recorded that never actually got recorded, or some of them got recorded but never got released. And it was just material that I had that was just sitting there, and I figured a lot of it would have went nowhere had I not actually recorded it. So one day I just got the notion to just put it all in a book and release it. So each chapter or each part represents a different album, or each part was designed to be a part of a separate album. So they all have different themes. Some songs have stories behind them. The more meaningful ones I find is in not chapter, but part 3, The Climate. That's actually my favorite.
Why?
And those songs are the more meaningful to me. They're more personal. They're about things that I've observed, things that I've experienced. It's really close to home for me. I'll give you a perfect example. I have a song called Targets, which talks about how everyday people are targeted without actually knowing it, whether it be by manufacturers of products or, in my case, being an African American, by the police. So those songs to me are more personal.
Why were they never put to song?
Some of them were. I was in a band and we recorded a lot But at some point, we stopped performing, and each individual started doing different things. And before I knew it, the band disbanded, and I was just left with all this material. But I mean, I was the only one who was actually working. Everyone else in my band relied on performing for a living, and given the fact that I had a 9-to-5, I was kind of juggling both. So I wasn't always devoted to the band the way I should have been. So I think that also contributed to the disbanding of the band.
It's hard, though. That's a really hard life.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I had just had a son at the time, and I had to really look at what was going to be beneficial to me going forward.
Right.
The band we weren't necessarily playing gigs that were paying any exuberant money. It was, we barely broke even sometimes. I would love for people to get a sense of who I am as a person. And in reading the book, a lot of the songs, I give you insight into what inspired the songs or what my thought process was behind creating the songs. So in essence, a lot of it is really about me, but I feel like a lot of people can relate to a lot of the songs that are contained within the book based on experiences.
All right, Lancel, that is a wrap for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thanks to all of our authors, and thanks to you especially for stopping by. If you missed anything, all you have to do is go to 710WOR.com and download the podcast. We'll see you next time. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.